My name is Matt Gilley, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to part one of our series discussing how co-op leaders can prepare their organizations for the disruptions we're seeing on the horizon. In this roughly 20-minute presentation, I'll address what our firm believes are the key macroeconomic and sociocultural trends that will affect co-ops in the future, as well as issues related to emerging technologies, member-related trends, issues related to demand for energy, human capital trends, and more. I'm the founder and strategy practice leader for Great Co-ops. Our team specializes in strategy consulting and leadership development for America's electric cooperatives. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share with you our team's thoughts on the future of the electric co-op business. There can be no doubt that electric co-ops are entering a significant period of disruption. It's our goal as a firm to assist electric co-op leaders in navigating these challenging times successfully so that they can ensure their co-ops prosper long into the future. My email address and phone number are at the bottom of this slide. Feel free to reach out to me anytime by telephone, text, or email. I'd be delighted to have a chance to visit with you and learn about your views of the changes on the horizon, as well as how your co-op is preparing to meet the future. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this presentation. So feel free to get in touch. I'd really love to hear from you. In this presentation, I'll first begin with a cautionary tale. Our view as a firm is that co-ops are being encouraged to move too quickly on certain matters, and we are urging our clients to take a very measured approach to investment at the moment. More on that shortly. Then I'll cover a bit about how disruptions in other industries over the years can be instructive to electric co-ops. Goodness knows there are plenty of examples out there about organizations that failed to adapt. I'll then turn to specific macroeconomic and sociocultural trends that our firm believes are most relevant to electric co-ops, including rural economies and household incomes in particular. Next, I'll discuss trends related to members, energy demand, emerging technologies, and human capital. We have a lot of ground to cover, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. I know you're very busy. Members of our team have had the pleasure of visiting with hundreds of co-op leaders over the years. We've interviewed co-op CEOs and general managers, CFOs, engineering leaders, member services managers, and people with all sorts of roles outside. There's hardly a role in a co-op that we've not tried to learn from, and we've spent many hours poring over economic and technology forecasts, government reports, extensive research by the Big Four professional services firms, and publications from NRECA. Our goal in all of this was to develop for our clients a clearer crystal ball so that we could provide them with the foresight necessary to make strategic and investment decisions today that will help their co-ops thrive in the future. Please know that economic and technology forecasts can be wildly off base, but we've done the best we can possibly do to ensure that the information we're providing represents the best in current thinking on the topics we cover in this presentation. It's our opinion as a firm serving electric co-ops exclusively that the future is very bright for well-managed, strategy-oriented co-ops. The trends we're seeing indeed are challenging and frankly frightening for many. But those co-ops that take the time now to develop a robust strategic planning architecture and a set of processes designed to enhance the organization's adaptability will no doubt be successful in the dynamic future we're predicting. We do believe, however, that the industry may see a mass extinction event as co-ops that fail to adequately prepare for the future are selected out of the environment, so to speak. Our belief is that we will likely see a significant merger and acquisition trend as a response to the challenges we're seeing on the horizon. One other word of caution. We believe that co-ops are being pressured to make decisions today that may not be in their best interest. The growing drumbeat around broadband and electric car charging are two examples. From our research, our belief is that co-ops need to take a very cautious approach to investing in these technologies at this point. Yes, those are emerging needs, and in the case of broadband, the need can be acute in places. However, we've seen far too many co-ops diversify too quickly and pay a price for it. Let's not forget that there is money to be made by encouraging co-ops to invest too soon in things that they have no business investing in at the time. This brings me to one of my favorite sayings that I've used with strategy clients many times over the past 2 decades. While it may be true that the early bird gets the worm, it's also true that the second mouse gets the cheese. So as co-op leaders, we encourage you to move very cautiously with regards to investment decisions in emerging technologies. That's not to say you shouldn't prepare for the future. Nothing could be farther from the truth. However, in our opinion, the smart money is on investing in your people, culture, and strategic planning architecture at this point. Those investments will pay dividends with regard to your co-op's strategic foresight and the ability for it to adapt and innovate. Then you'll know when the time is right to make the larger strategic investments. On this slide, we have the logos of 4 companies that were at one time the dominant players in their industries. I know you'll recognize them. And I don't want to belabor the point that disruption can kill even the strongest of organizations. Toys R Us's recent bankruptcy filing is just the most recent example. They were blindsided by the move to e-commerce, and they're hobbled by excessive debt. Kodak missed the digital photography wave. Blockbuster was late to the game in streaming video, and they never caught up. And Nokia, despite having a market capitalization of almost $250 billion at one point, was blindsided by the smartphone revolution. We believe strongly that electric co-ops are facing this same level of threat potential. In fact, we envision a future where poles and wires may be of secondary importance, at least with regard to residential energy use in the coming decades. Such radical transformation of the industry will leave many co-ops in the dark, but those that develop innovative business models and invest in the skills development of their people will undoubtedly thrive. Our view is that the electric co-ops need to begin conceiving of themselves very differently if they are to thrive in the new energy economy. More on that in part 2 of our series. Electric co-ops have had many decades of growth and success, and that's a wonderful thing. As someone who was raised on a farm and ranch that was served by a co-op, I know firsthand that the success of the co-op meant a great deal to our family. However, the skills and business models that led to the success of co-ops since the 1930s are not sufficient for the success of co-ops in the future. In other words, what got you here won't be there. Let's spend a few minutes talking about macroeconomic and sociocultural trends that we feel are most relevant to co-ops right now. There are lots we could discuss, but in the interest of time, we've selected only 2 to highlight here. Those are the struggles rural America is facing and personal income levels. In short, while it's not true for all rural areas, much of rural America is struggling. Poverty, divorce, teen pregnancy, and premature mortality are all higher in rural areas than in urban ones. The USDA predicts a significant decline in farm incomes, and death rates are greater than birth rates in many rural counties. In that regard, across the U.S., 2/3 of rural counties with fewer than 50,000 residents are seeing population declines. This is clearly of concern to our rural electric co-op clients, but not so much for those we work with in suburban areas. For most co-ops, however, this is something they should watch very carefully, as there is no sign of this trend reversing at the moment. One point about incomes and the ability of consumers to pay for energy. This topic appears to be especially important in rural areas. About 1/3 of consumers nationwide report having trouble paying their electric bills, and about 1 in 5 report that energy bills compete with funds for other basic necessities. This is partly indicative of economic stagnation in rural America, but it's also a reflection of the fact that inflation-adjusted incomes have not grown in almost 2 decades. As much as we wish it weren't the case, disruption is the new normal for co-ops. Take a look at these data from Deloitte and the EIA. Almost 1/5 of industrial energy users reduced their energy use in 2016. The majority have on-site generation capabilities now. They get about 11% of their power from renewables, and 90% of them have invested in some form of energy management solutions. We'll talk more about this matter in part 2 because we see it as a prime opportunity for co-ops. This snapshot of U.S. residential energy consumers is also interesting. About half are willing to let their power utility control their HVAC and water heating systems if they could save 15% on their bills. About 40% are using energy apps, and there's a growing interest in community and rooftop solar. In short, residential energy consumers are growing more interested in electric power, and they have an appetite for partnering with utilities to reduce consumption and save money. Speaking of energy consumption, the U.S. Energy Information Administration, among others, is forecasting flat demand for energy for the next 20-plus years, especially with regard to residential and commercial users. They are, however, predicting growth in industrial energy use. But at Great Co-ops, we're concerned that they are overly optimistic, especially given the numbers from Deloitte in 2016 that we discussed earlier. The key takeaway here is that electric co-ops can no longer count on growth to sustain their operations, to overcome weaknesses in their business models and culture, or to mask inefficient processes. Every co-op leader we've talked with for the past 2 years has had two things at the top of his or her mind. One is energy-related technology, and the other is the upcoming wave of retirements. We'll talk about both, but let's discuss renewables, distributed generation, storage, and energy efficiency for a moment. Solar energy is becoming much more affordable, both at the utility scale and for residential and commercial rooftops. In just 1 year, the cost of utility scale PV dropped 11%, while the cost of rooftop PV declined 26%. As you can see in this chart from the EIA, there is likely to be a massive increase in renewable generation capacity in the U.S. over the next 3 decades. This is almost all driven by growth in solar. One thing to keep in mind is that the EIA has been way off in its solar forecast for about a decade. They consistently underestimate solar installations. So our view at Great Co-ops is that the growth forecast shown here is likely to be on the low side. Here's another look at the data. What I'd like to point out is the blue bars on the right that show anticipated growth in storage capacity. If the EIA is correct, we should see approximately 40 gigawatts of installed storage capacity by 2050, which has serious implications for co-ops, both distribution co-ops and G&Ts. This 2017 graph from CoBank is very interesting. It shows a dramatic decline in the cost of lithium-ion storage. The solid line is actual and the dashed line is projected. This will surely drive significant adoption of this technology in the future for co-ops, G&Ts, and even members of all types. The point of this graph is to demonstrate the growth in distributed generation for direct use in the coming decades. As you can see, the growth is anticipated to be the largest for residential energy consumers. And according to the EIA, the growth in this area will exceed the growth in power sales by utilities. This tells us that a large number of electric co-ops wishing to accelerate their growth will make serious efforts to explore business models related to sales and maintenance of such technologies, as some are doing now. This is a very interesting chart, this time from the International Energy Agency. It shows that a number of developed countries, Germany, France, the UK, and Japan in particular, have far outpaced the US in terms of household energy efficiency gains since 2000. The average household in Germany, for instance, saved in 2016 about $580 on their energy bills due to efficiency improvements. In the US, it was only $140. This tells electric co-ops a couple of important things. First, US residential efficiency has a long way to go. To us, this shows that there could be an even greater reduction in residential energy consumption in the years ahead. So the forecast we saw earlier with regard to flat residential energy consumption could actually be an optimistic forecast. Second, this chart indicates that there could be significant opportunities for co-ops to enhance member engagement and satisfaction, while at the same time increasing revenues by growing their emphasis on residential energy efficiency initiatives, products, and services. As if these issues aren't enough, co-ops at the same time are facing a serious challenge with regard to talent flight because of retirements, challenges recruiting people to fill vacancies, and evolving member expectations and demands of their co-op. You may recall this RE magazine cover from last year with a feature article on the wave of co-op CEO or GM retirements. We've talked with co-op leaders and statewide CEOs all over the nation, and this is a big topic across the board. But it's not just CEOs who are retiring, of course. According to PwC, about 40% of all electric utility workers in the United States are eligible to retire at the end of 2018. To our firm, the biggest challenge of all for co-ops in the near future will be finding the kind of talent they need in the locations where they operate to do the kinds of jobs that the 21st century energy economy will demand. Co-op leaders simply must develop the kind of organizational cultures, strategies, and brands that attract the best and brightest talent. Two more things I'll discuss before closing are the evolving residential and commercial or industrial member expectations. These are going to result in significant tensions for co-ops going forward. Regarding residential members, they will, of course, be focused on things like reliability and cost and safety and quality. But there's a growing demand for demand-side management technologies, smart home technologies, distributed generation, greater convenience, and excellence in communication. Never before has the energy consumer had higher expectations of its power provider, and this represents challenges, but also opportunities for forward-thinking co-ops. As we saw earlier, there's a great deal of energy-related innovation taking place by industrial energy users, and that trend will only grow more pronounced. In addition to their concerns about reliability, safety, cost, and quality, they'll continue to expand their on-site generation capacity. Moreover, they will undoubtedly continue refining and expanding their energy management competencies due to cost concerns, legislative issues, consumer advocacy, environmental concerns, and others. Something to keep in mind is that these energy management competencies include both technology and human capital components. We see tremendous opportunities for co-ops to consult with commercial and industrial members in this area, sell and maintain technologies, and provide outsourced energy management services. In this way, co-ops will expand their revenue opportunities and deepen their relationships with their members. Moreover, the level of investment in this more consulting-oriented business model is modest compared to many other opportunities co-ops are exploring, like broadband, for instance. In summary, co-op leaders are facing an exciting yet uncertain time. Their job is going to be one in which the puzzle becomes increasingly complex to solve. However, we have no doubt that co-ops focusing clearly on the development of a solid strategic planning architecture, the development of an organizational culture that attracts, engages, and retains top talent, and emphasizes innovation and adaptability will not just survive, they'll thrive. I hope you'll join me for part 2, where I'll discuss the ways in which co-ops can respond strategically to enhance their adaptability and innovation to be ready for the disruptions on the horizon. Finally, as I noted at the beginning, our team would love to have the chance to visit with you about any of these issues or other matters related to your co-op, so feel free to reach out to me anytime. Goodbye for now.